All right, we're told they're coming by the thousands, ultimately the millions, all these Syrian refugees who are seeking out a safe haven. All that sounds good and very sympathetic until you come to realize that maybe they're not all who they say they are, and they're certainly not all Syrians. A separate study out today that shows maybe as many as 4 out of 5 are not. In other words, they're from somewhere else but Syria. Former Deputy Undersecretary of the Navy said that's the problem with leaping too soon without checking where these people are from. Secretary, the bottom line is we don't know, do we? And so this rush to bring them to any country can get a little overwhelming, right?
Well, rushes are generally a bad idea. The fact is that they're coming from Eritrea and Somalia and Libya, Afghanistan. Syria is only one of them. You know, if you look at the statements by the English and the German governments, they said that they've been willing to accept Syrian refugees, and that is the minority. Still, it's a problem.
All right, when it's a problem, though, it obviously is one of a toll we've not seen in a generation. And the fear seems to be that the world is blinking as all these people are suffering. A move today in the United States to look at bringing more of them here. We don't know how many of them would be Syrian, but we know we take in about 70,000 every year. They want to up it to 100,000. That is all those who are admitted into this country, whether they're refugees or not. What do you think of those numbers? Because invariably a good many of them would be these Syrians or Eritreans or whatever they are, whoever they are.
Yeah, well, look, that's very serious. The General John Allen, retired Marine general who advises the administration on ISIS, and both the current and the former chairs of the House Homeland Security Committee have said publicly that ISIS has said publicly that they're going to exploit this problem, the refugee problem. So unless we're looking very carefully at who's coming in and checking out their bona fides and their backgrounds, we're asking for trouble. And
but you know, there's really no way to do that, right, Secretary? I mean, with a lot of these people, they don't bring any papers or records with them, at least that we know of. So we're really what do you do?
Yeah, I know, but look, people, I know a guy who, for example, has been in the United States 15 years. And he comes from a NATO country, and I know other people like him as well. They applied for their American citizenship. They were here legally. It took them 16 months or so to get clearance, and that's with references here in the United States. If we're just going to let people in and ISIS says that they're trying to exploit us, we're asking for trouble. I mean, it's a serious issue.
All right, Secretary, thank you very, very much. We do know that the Pope is on his way to the United States later this week, has already spoken on this issue and said that the world has an obligation to help these people.
Sure.
But we'll see what happens, Secretary. Thank you again. To bring you up to date on what the Pope is saying on this, he is taking in a couple of families to the Vatican. We don't know if those families have arrived, but he has urged all countries, all individuals consider doing the same. This would be very similar to the way the world responded to the Vietnamese boat people situation in the late 1970s, where it was urged at that time on the part of Pope Paul VI to take in a lot of refugees and to do so quickly. Sheriff Paul Babbia says that, well, that's fine on paper, but the devil is in the details, because you never know some of the devils you might be taking in. Sheriff, you know a thing or two about borders and how people could take advantage of those borders, and you know what's going on abroad. And you know what the Pope has been saying on this subject. What do you think? Are you guys at cross purposes, you and the Pope?
No, I actually am a big fan of the Pope, and America is actually the shining example of compassion and still the beacon of hope and freedom, welcoming immigrants. Last year alone, we took over 1 million legal immigrants. And so we have a strong record here in the United States. The problem is the illegal immigrants. And oftentimes it gets conflated over the compassion and the war-torn areas like you're talked about earlier in Syria, and the truth bears out the facts that it's only 1 in 5 are from these war-torn countries, and that you have people from all over the world, not just Africa and places like Iraq, Afghanistan. Heck, you've got 20,000 Albanians trying to get in, and they're at peace. So people from all over the world may be hurting, but America sets the example for lawful immigration. And that's what we all want and support, is support the rule of law, follow the laws we have on the books.
All right, so when the administration talks about upping our commitment to 100,000 refugees from 70,000, doesn't delineate who those extra numbers would be, I think it's fair to assume that it would be among this bunch that we thought were all Syrians. They're not all Syrians. But as a guy who has to track records of people, Sheriff, how do you do that? How do you do that?
It's not done well, I can tell you that, and this is where this administration, President Obama, has released serious, dangerous criminals into our streets. Last year, we accepted 137,000 asylum seekers and refugees just from Central America. So these numbers are putting out 70, 80,000. The doors have been blown off those numbers already in the past just from people on the Western Hemisphere. So forget trying to take refugees and asylum seekers from all over the world because these numbers mean nothing. They're just talking points for the president.
You know, I know you're not an I told you so sort of guy, Sheriff, but I was thinking of you and the criticism that your office was getting from all the way from the likes of France and these other socialist countries out in Europe, so that we were showing a sort of a dismissive slap on the back to some of these who wanted the safety of our shores, yet facing the same problem on actually technically a smaller scale than you. They're loath to take these folks in. What do you think of that?
Well, here again, they're first to criticize America and our history of generosity and for fighting not just for our freedoms and liberties, but for theirs. And now here, they have all these people at their doorsteps because of economic reasons, as well as some war-torn areas, and they're putting up fences. They're saying, no, you're not coming in. And so a little hypocrisy here, and America continues to be truly the example for lawful immigration.
All right, Sheriff, very good seeing you again. Thank you very much. All right.